Two men just sat down in a room in Islamabad. What they decide in the next 2 weeks will either end a war or ignite one far worse. And almost nobody in the world understands what is actually being demanded behind those closed doors. Subscribe and hit the bell. We're covering every development as it breaks. For 47 years, the United States and Iran refused to sit in the same room. Jimmy Carter was president the last time it happened. The Berlin Wall was still standing. The word internet didn't exist. And since that moment, everything between these two countries has been war by other means. Sanctions, proxy conflicts, assassinations, nuclear standoffs, and finally, 6 weeks ago, an open shooting war that killed over 3,000 people. Today, that 47-year wall cracked. JD Vance walked into the Serena Hotel in Islamabad and sat across a table from Iran's senior officials, the first direct, face-to-face, high-level meeting between the two countries since the Islamic Revolution. This is not a rumor. Both the White House and Iran's state media confirmed it. But here is what nobody is telling you clearly. The gap between what each side is demanding may be physically unbridgeable in 2 weeks. And if these talks fail, Trump has already said the shooting starts again. Stay with us. Because in the next few minutes, we're going to show you exactly what's on that table, what each side is refusing to give up, and the one countdown clock running in the background that changes everything. Let's start with the Iranian delegation because the way they arrived in Islamabad was itself a message to the world. 71 people flew in, including negotiators, military advisors, and media. But inside that aircraft, rows of seats were left deliberately empty. In those seats, photographs, backpacks belonging to children killed in the Manab school strike during Operation Epic Fury. Iran did not arrive in Islamabad asking for a deal. Iran arrived in Islamabad showing the cost of the last deal that never came. Their lead negotiator, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, a former IRGC Air Force commander who flew combat missions in the Iran-Iraq War, told Pakistani media upon landing, "Our experience in negotiating with the Americans has always been met with failure and broken promises. That is the man JD Vance is negotiating with today." Now, here's the first thing you need to understand, and this is where it gets complicated. Iran walked in with 4 conditions it calls non-negotiable, and every single one of them collides directly with an American red line. Condition 1. Full Iranian sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, the waterway that carries 20% of the world's oil. Trump has publicly demanded it be open completely, immediately, with no tolls and no limitations. These two positions cannot both be true at the same time without a legal framework that has never existed in history. Condition 2. Full war reparations from what Iran calls the aggressors, the United States and Israel. The American position, Operation Epic Fury, was a legitimate military action. No reparations. The gap between those two descriptions of the same war is not a negotiating gap. It is a fundamental disagreement about who started it and why. Condition 3. Unconditional release of $6 billion in frozen Iranian assets. The White House denied agreeing to this even as a confidence-building measure. Qatar says the money is still frozen. The U.S. Treasury has not authorized its release. Condition 4, a regional ceasefire covering all of West Asia, not just a halt to strikes on Iran, but an end to Israeli operations in Lebanon, a halt to attacks on Hezbollah everywhere simultaneously. Netanyahu has explicitly rejected this. He said the ceasefire does not include Lebanon. Vance said Lebanon has nothing to do with Iran. Iran's foreign minister said that contradiction is the entire problem. Here's the curiosity loop you should be sitting with right now. If Iran controls the Hormuz Key, and Hormuz only reopens when Lebanon is resolved, and Lebanon is something the U.S. says isn't on the table, then what exactly are they negotiating about? But underneath all 4 of those conditions is the issue that makes everything else secondary: the nuclear question. Trump said Friday his main objective is to prevent Iran from having any nuclear capabilities. Not limit, not monitor, not pause, prevent. His envoy made it operationally specific. Iran's enrichment facilities at Natanz, Fordo, and Isfahan must be dismantled entirely. Republican Senators Lindsey Graham and Tom Cotton warned that any deal must include full dismantlement before Senate ratification. And Graham said openly he is not interested in Iran saving face. Iran's position, stated consistently across every document, every press conference, every back channel, the right to nuclear enrichment is non-negotiable. It is in their publicly released 10-point proposal. Iran's atomic energy chief said any attempt to limit enrichment will fail. This is not a gap between two positions. This is two definitions of what a deal even is. Now, here's the second thing almost no one is connecting, and this changes the entire timeline. Europe faces a jet fuel shortage in 3 weeks, not months, weeks. The head of Airports Council International Europe sent a letter to the EU warning that a systemic aviation fuel crisis could arrive within 21 days because of the Hormuz blockage. The summer travel season, the most economically significant aviation period of the year, begins in 60 days. Oil is still above $95. The Hormuz is still not fully open. The world's largest shipping company, Maersk, says the ceasefire announcement is not sufficient certainty to resume normal operations. Every hour these talks run without a breakthrough, the global economic clock ticks louder. And here is the political pressure layered on top of that. Trump's domestic approval sits at 35%. American gas prices are above $4. Republican senators are already drawing red lines on the nuclear question. Vance needs a deal that can pass a Senate that has told him what that deal must contain. Iran's 47-year strategy has been precisely to prevent the Senate ratification process, because Iranian experience, as Ghalibaf stated on landing, is that American promises do not hold regardless of what the paper says. Which brings us to the third open question. Does the side under more domestic economic pressure actually have more leverage or less? In Tehran, a 62-year-old man named Amir Rezai Far told the Associated Press, "Peace alone is not enough for our country because we've been hit very hard. There have been huge costs. 3,000 Iranians killed, nearly 2,000 in Lebanon, 23 in Israel. 13 Americans dead, 3,500 miles of infrastructure damaged across 6 countries, and an ordinary citizen in Tehran saying that even if peace arrives tomorrow, it may already be too late for what was lost." The Islamabad talks are the test of whether 6 weeks of war and 47 years of hostility have finally produced the conditions for something all previous diplomacy could not. The 2015 Iran nuclear deal took 18 months to negotiate and was abandoned 3 years later. The Geneva talks of early 2026 collapsed within days. The Muscat talks of 2025 produced a year of negotiation and then a war. Now, 2 men are in a sealed hotel in a sealed diplomatic district, escorted by Pakistani fighter jets, surrounded by Chinese, Egyptian, Saudi, and Qatari officials present to facilitate. They have 2 weeks, 4 Iranian conditions, 5 American red lines, Lebanese civilians being bombed while the talks proceed, a Hormuz that is not open, and 47 years of broken promises between them. The aircraft that carried the Iranian delegation to this table had children's backpacks on empty seats. The question is not whether both sides want a deal. The question is whether both sides can afford to make one, and whether either side can afford to come home without one. Subscribe and enable notifications right now. This is the most consequential diplomatic moment since the 2015 nuclear deal. And we are tracking every verified development as it happens. If you understand why this matters, share this video with one person who doesn't. That's how this coverage reaches people who need it. Now drop your answer to one of these 3 questions below. Every comment is read and the strongest analysis gets featured. Question A. Iran's lead negotiator landed saying 47 years of American promises have meant failure. Vance landed warning that if Iran plays the U.S., the negotiating team is not that receptive. Research on negotiations between deep adversaries shows that the first session either builds a minimal foundation of process trust or it collapses entirely. Based on those psychological starting positions, which side's opening posture is more compatible with producing any agreement at all? Question B. Iran controls the Hormuz key. Hormuz controls oil prices. Oil prices control Trump's domestic approval. Trump's approval controls his leverage over Netanyahu. Netanyahu controls what happens in Lebanon. Lebanon controls whether Iran considers any ceasefire real. If you map that chain in reverse, who actually has the most structural leverage in Islamabad today, and why does the answer change depending on which 2-week deadline you're measuring against? Question C. This is the third time in 4 years that U.S.-Iran talks have reached a critical framework stage and collapsed. Geneva 2026, Muscat 2025, and the 2015 deal all share a specific structural failure point. If the Islamabad talks produce a signed document today, name the single most likely reason that document will not be implemented within 30 days, and explain whether that failure point is preventable given who is in the room and who is not.